And away we go. It is the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken right here on BearcatJournal.com. www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Go to the website. They will deliver right to you pretty much anywhere inside the 275 loop, or Wednesday through Sunday, lunch and dinner. You can head down to Dayton, Kentucky, tell them to pump it up and save yourself 15% off of the Galactic goodness. It is out of this world. Hi, Aaron.
Yo.
There's been a lot that's happened since Sunday.
Yeah.
That's kind of how things work around here.
Today was a fun day.
Yeah. Schedule release day, always a good one. And then yesterday we had Tyson Bites introductory press conference on campus. So we'll get to a little talking about talking. But first, it's the news of the day. So we might as well lead off with it. The Cincinnati Bearcats schedule for 2024 has been released. It is as such. August 31st against Towson. September 7th against Pitt. Those both at home. At Miami of Ohio. Houston at home. At Texas Tech. Then a bye week. 2 bye weeks in this season, which is interesting. And then at Central Florida, Arizona State, at Colorado, another bye week. And then you finish with West Virginia at home, Iowa State and Kansas State on the road, and TCU at home to close out the season. It could have been tougher. I think, looking at it in comparison to how a lot of these teams shook out a season ago, it's very favorable for Cincinnati. I do think it gives you a chance to start fast. Towson, Pitt, Miami, Houston. If you're gonna improve and you're gonna be on the right path, you got to be 3-1 probably in that stretch to set the tone for the season. I think.
At the very least, I would like to see them 4-0. For
sure, everybody would like that, Aaron. I'm just trying to be realistic.
Sure, I don't know that 4-0 isn't unrealistic though. We'll have to see how the spring goes.
I'm saying you have to go 3-1. Of course, I would prefer 4-0. But if you're going to be the point I made, if you're going to be back on track to have a successful season, if you're coming out of this anything less than 3-1,
well,
that's my read on the first 4 games.
The 2 difficult games, if you will, Pitt and Houston, are both at home. So,
right.
Again, you cannot lose to Towson or Miami on the road,
especially after last year. You got to get the ball back.
But yeah, Pitt and Houston at home, very favorable. I think Cincinnati was ranked as having one of the most favorable schedules in all of the country, even before this came out. Just based on home and away opponents. And now here you start with an opportunity to go 3-1, 4-0, and really set a tone for your team following a season where the tone was never set.
Well, we thought it was at Pitt, and then it just fell off a cliff.
I mean, I guess you could argue that there was a tone set. It just was not a favorable tone.
I mean, they were 2-0 at Pitt going into the Miami game.
I just mean
once you got
to the bye week.
Stick. Yeah, it didn't stick. The tone went sour quickly. And it turned out Pitt wasn't very good last year.
I think they'll be
better.
Yeah.
I think Pitt will be better. I mean, Narduzzi's got a good program. They'll bounce back some. But they ended up not. I mean, that just wasn't the win we thought it was.
No, we all felt really good leaving Pitt, and it was that didn't last very long.
Yeah, exactly. But the final stretch for me And this is why you've got to build momentum early. But once you get past Arizona State, or once you get past Colorado, West Virginia, not easy. Iowa State and Kansas State on the road, TCU at home. You better build up some equity. You can't get to that point and need 2 or 3 wins to get bowl eligible because you're not going to get them.
Probably not.
That's why the first part is critical.
Yeah, I don't know that West Virginia scares me as much as those last 3, but
I watched the West Virginia UC game last year.
Right, until you start stacking up some Big 12 wins, every team should be a threat at this point in conference.
West Virginia bullied them, pushed them around, and beat them up in every way you could beat somebody up. So
their quarterback did his best White Vic impression.
So as long as that is still my lasting memory of the West Virginia UC game, I'm going to say that's the beginning of a difficult stretch. The rest of the stretch is probably more difficult, but they kicked Cincinnati's ass, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Sure. For all the reasons. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, going into the bye week, though, the only game on the road that's tough is that Texas Tech at Texas Tech. As we all know, Brendel Lubbock, it's hard. But then you have a bye week before you head off to Orlando. So yeah. I don't know. I think everything really, honestly, the bye week even, I think, lines up pretty nicely.
I agree. It's not I'm not looking at it thinking this is going to be brutal. Like any of those 4 games at the end, I'm not ruling out that they could win those games.
Sure.
I'm saying you've got a chance in those games before those 4 because the schedule is favorable to get some momentum before you get there. That's going to be the important thing. Like you would think at Arizona State, you'd like to have 5 wins at that point.
Yeah. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
I mean, if you're at Houston is 4, Texas Tech 5, UCF 6, Arizona State 7, then Colorado 8. You got to stack. You can get the 5-6 wins, 4-5 wins. Although if you're only at 4 and you got to get 2 of the next 4, then you're in trouble.
Well, if you're at 4, I think we're reevaluating everything.
Yeah, because it's not likely you're going to get a lot higher than 4. So, all right. That's a preliminary breakdown of the schedule. I'm sure we'll hammer into it more tomorrow night and again on Monday on the BBP as we just kind of chew through it and make observations as more information pops up on, the ins and outs of who they're playing. Also had a talking about talking yesterday here.
We did. So they Coach Satterfield introduced his new defensive coordinator, did a press conference with one Tyson Veit, coming to us from Iowa State, where he was there for 8 seasons as the linebackers coach, assistant head coach. Did some things out there. He had all conference guys. I believe he had all Americans.
He did.
3, I think, total. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. In his 8 years, they've had 3 All-Americans at linebacker. Right. Just at his position group.
Yeah. And that's impressive.
That's pretty good development. Or it's damn good evaluation. Because you weren't getting 5 stars at Iowa State. You're getting guys and turning them into ball players.
Yeah. So Coach Satterfield introduced him first off and said that the things that were important to him as he went through this process, because he did hire outside of his tree, he went out of his comfort zone and looked for the guy who was best for Cincinnati at this point in time, not just settling into something that was comfortable. But the things that were important were trust, somebody he could trust. And he said that as he got to talking with him, and 45-minute conversation here, 45-minute conversation there, the next one they started to stack, and there wasn't any like at any point just a conversation or a time where he was like, this is my guy, until he got just building those conversations over and over and over again. But said wanted a guy who could teach. Clearly he can teach, as he had 3 all-conference guys at the same time on his crew for 3 straight years, I believe. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the
17,
3 years in a
18,
row,
19.
all of their starters were all conference, whether it
And
be
that's-
first team, second team, third team. Yeah.
That's outrageous. Coach said he had arguably the best defense in the Big 12, or coming from a part of the best defense in the Big 12.
Consistently the best defense in the Big 12 for sure over the past 5 years or so.
He also has experience being a head coach, as he was the head coach in D3 at Muskingum College. He's from Ohio, from Logan, not far from where I'm at here in Athens. But all of those things added up and were the reason that Coach Satterfield picked Tyson Veit.
Yeah, I mean, I asked him straight up about a couple things that I thought were important. One being, how much is he married to the 3 high safety, 3-3-5 defense? And basically said, we got to look at the roster and make an evaluation. Like I said, I think it was Brent or somebody. Yeah, it was Brent last night. But if you think you're deep at safety with 2 safety spots, then you add a 3rd safety spot, all of a sudden that depth doesn't math the way that it mathed when there were only 2. So they've got to come in, at least for this year, and make that decision. Do we have enough dudes that can do what we need to do to run this defense? I think it'll get the first look.
It sounded like he also was kind of saying that this defense was going to evolve. It was not going to be something that, kind of to your point, that they are married to from the very beginning, as they do evaluate the personnel and go through some things. But it's going to be something that whatever they have in spring ball isn't necessarily what they're going to run out in the fall, isn't necessarily what they're going to have come week 6. So it sounds like this defense is going to continue to be evolving throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think the further point being, like, if they have the personnel to run that defense, then they'll run that defense, right? Like, sure. This guy has had success with it in this league against these mostly same opponents. Like, if you can make it work, I'm sure his desire is to make it work. And I'm sure the effort is going to be there to make it work. And then you have to make that decision. All right, are we good enough? And I do think it comes down to safety. Because you're going to have the type of guys on the D-line that you were already planning for a 3-3-5. The linebackers are kind of in place. Corners are doing their own thing. Safety would be the change. That would be the inflection point, I guess, is a good way to put it, on whether this defense gets fixed or not.
So he did want to start with fundamentals, wants to keep it simple initially, and then get to where they feel like they can start to get aggressive. I really hope it doesn't take anywhere near as long as it did with Coach Brown to get aggressive, because I don't feel like that we ever got to see an aggressive attacking style defense with Coach Brown.
No, they did early. The Pitt game would be a great example. Like, that's what it's supposed to look like. They battered and bruised Pitt's quarterback for most of that game. That was the one time, and then we never saw it again.
So much that he became a tight end.
Right. Like, where was that? We didn't see it the rest of the year.
I don't know.
Really.
Did mention recruiting and said that he wanted to start locally and then expand to a national look. But emphasis being starting in the state of Ohio. Sounded like he was excited to work back in Ohio again, as that's where his roots are. And I don't know how familiar he is. I would assume at this point, Iowa State's been recruiting Ohio, so I would assume he's fairly familiar with coming back and being the guy in Ohio for that staff, or at least running point for it.
Yeah.
So now he can really spread his wings and fly here as he becomes. There's not many Ohio guys on this staff or guys with roots here. As you look at Kerry, you look at Walt, and now Coach Fight.
Here's something I love about that. His background. So here's what you don't think about, like why having a guy from Ohio is ultimately a bigger deal than what it looks like on the surface. Where do a lot of high school coaches, and not necessarily head coaches, but like guys on staff, guys, guess what? They play D3 ball and they go away to school, and then they come back home and they get a job. You know what they do? They coach the high school football team. They're the linebackers coach. They're the defensive coordinator, whatever the case may be. Having a hand in like those trees is going to get you all over the place in high school around the state of Ohio. Like that's why it's kind of sneaky, like to have those lower level. It doesn't happen as much. How many guys get to go play at D1? Much less go play at D1 and then come back and coach their hometown high school. That's not really how it works. These D2 and D3 guys, that's what a college staff looks like.
Well, and
high school staff looks like. Sorry.
Let's look at the fact that he was a D3 coach. One of the things he pointed out that I just didn't ever really think about is pointing out how humbling it is to be a D3 coach, where you have to do things like mow the grass on your own for your own games, paint the lines, and go turn the lights on and make sure that everything is. They don't have a staff of tens of people who are doing these things all for you. Exactly. Whereas Cincinnati's and Iowa State, even before that, was a little bit different taste in his mouth.
Yeah. I like the hire. I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly what kind of defense they settle on. Do they have enough at safety to do what he would probably prefer to do? Some of the stuff that'll be fun as we get into the spring here.
Right.
I think we're six weeks or so away from the start of spring football.
Can't be far.
It never stops. The clock keeps on rolling. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks to everybody. We will see you tomorrow night. That's the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com.